Good evening and welcome to Chasing the Facts. I'm your host, Sam Chase, and we are currently engaged in the third of 4 separate interviews of candidates who are running for positions in Chelmsford. The local Chelmsford election will be held on April 2nd. We have interviewed select board candidates. We have interviewed 1 of 2 school committee candidates. In this interview, we are interviewing the second of 2 school committee candidates. Just a note to the viewers why we're doing it this way. I had originally set up the interviews to interview all candidates running for the position at the same time. Unfortunately, Rodney Cleaves, whom we're interviewing this evening, was not able at the last minute to make the taping, so we decided we would cut the time in half, and we would give Diana LeBeau 1 half hour, and we would give Rodney another half hour, so that's why we're doing it this way. When you see the planning board show, it will be all 4 candidates being interviewed at the same time. So just a little housekeeping there. So Rodney, we always start off by having you give a statement, and since you're running for office,
well, first
make your
off,
pitch.
Thanks for putting up with my last-minute schedule change.
Not a problem.
Last Friday, and my best to Diana. Rod Cleaves, I'm fairly known in town, maybe not well known. Been a 30-year resident in Chelmsford. I've put no less than 10 children through the school system, and I have 1 in the school system now.
Now these are not your natural children, are they?
5 of them are.
5 of them are. Okay.
5 of them are. The rest were foster children that we took in. Over the years, we've had almost 500 foster kids in the house. Not all of them ended up in Chelmsford because state law required us to send them to their school of origin if they were enrolled. If they weren't enrolled, we sent them to Chelmsford. Didn't make us the most popular people in town, but we did it. School committee has always been something that intrigued me, interested me. I've taught at the professional level in industry, and I've taught at the college level as well, at Gordon Conwell, where I got my master's. So teaching's not foreign to me, but I honestly have never taught in the public school system. So, that's new. But I do have some experience with large budgets. I have a pretty good eye for not only the big processes, but the minor details. I spent 47 years in a combination of private industry and government service. The last job I had before I retired in 2020 was as the Chief Information Officer at the VA in Bedford. So deal with people, deal with money, deal with projects. None of that's been foreign to me at all. And the other thing, just as an aside, this may come up later, being retired will let me devote as much time as possible to, this is probably, next to select board, this is probably one of the most intense jobs in the town. And I've got no problems putting as much time in as necessary, and I'll be there.
And some would argue, actually, that the school committee is even more intense than the select board. But it's like anything else.
I've certainly heard from a couple of the school committee members
Yes,
that say that.
It's what you put into the position. You can make of it what you want, pretty much. So.
This will be all but a full-time position for me.
Okay.
See it.
Very good. So let's put our finger on it. What specifically is motivating you to run at this time?
The most specific thing, I'm not a one-issue candidate by any means, but if you have to pick one thing, it would be the special education programs that Chelmsford has. I've had a number of special needs children go through the Chelmsford school system, and we seem to find some inconsistencies about how the IEPs are written and interpreted and how the special ed needs are actually going to be developed. My current daughter goes to a school in New Hampshire because there was no accommodation for her in this town. I'd like to see some accommodation. I'd like to see some better emphasis on the special ed's need, maybe even develop a genuine feel for that, if you will, spark some interest in that at the administration level.
Well, of course, that's an area that's very highly regulated by the state. You have to meet all kinds of specified criteria and so forth. And the special education budget as a percentage of the total overall education budget in Chelmsford is very high with regard to the number of students.
Yes, it is.
Who are in it, because many of the services that you have to provide are very costly. I think that the town does a pretty good job of trying to provide as many services as they can within the school environment itself, but of course some students have to be outsourced depending on their needs. So that's a pretty complex area that you're interested in and that you would like to take on.
Well, I'm not saying it's going to be easy, and I'm not saying it's actually going to happen, but at least have someone on the school committee listening to parents like ourselves with special needs children.
That's focused on that area.
Focused on that area, but that's not the only thing. There's plenty more to do.
Yes. Well, there are folks in town who think that the town spends too much money in just about every area. That's a matter of opinion, but that's a legitimate concern that some people have. So taking a look at the school budget and knowing, the extensive programs that are provided, and most of which have to be provided under state law, do you think the town spends too much, too little, or just about the right amount on its programs, on its educational programs?
On a percentage basis compared to other cities and towns in the Commonwealth, Chelmsford's right about in the middle. We spend about 57% of our total town budget on the schools, depending upon how you pull out certain aspects of the budget, like the administration building itself and things like that.
And that would also include Neshoba Tech.
Yes, it
that's
does.
part of our overall education.
Right, we do pay for
offering.
that, and we also have a liaison to Neshoba Tech.
Right.
But we're right about in the middle of what the rest of the state spends. If I can take it back to a per child spending, we've got towns in the Commonwealth that spend as little as $10,000
On a per pupil basis.
per pupil basis, and we have towns like Cambridge comes to mind, where they spend almost $40,000 per child. Chelmsford falls in right in the high teens. I think it's $16,000 or $17,000 per child. So budgetarily, I think we're on track, and we're doing all right. I know, I have a neighbor friend of mine who complains every time the tax bill comes in because he doesn't have any kids in Chelmsford. So why is he?
You only have one neighbor who complains about his tax increase? That's pretty good.
Well, it's because he doesn't have any children in Chelmsford or anywhere in school. But but everybody talks about the tax.
Oh, they
And
certainly
yes,
do.
We complain. I find people complain less about what's being spent and complain more about the check they have to write every quarter,
Right.
or the equivalent thereof. But I think money-wise, we're doing okay, and we also, like going back to the special education needs, we also have an insurance policy or multiple insurance policies to help pay for anything that's over and above extraordinary. So not every dime that if a child is going to cost us, say, an extra $20,000 to send them to a specialty school in, just pick a place, Lowell. Beyond a certain limit, we do get some money back. First off, we get some money back from the state and sometimes federal government, depending upon the program. We also get some money back from an insurance policy. So what we spend on outside services is always capped for what comes out of our pocket. But we are paying for the insurance too. And of course, no tax money, no matter where it comes from, is completely free. So we do have to mind that.
Yeah. What was it? Milton Friedman said, "There's no free lunch." Yes.
I'm not sure if it was free.
Yeah,
or not.
I think it was, and I think that's actually true. So
I have a poster in my house that says, "Nobody gets anything for free unless somebody gets something for nothing."
okay, now
I think I have that backwards.
let's think about that for a minute.
I know nobody gets something for nothing unless somebody pays for
Right. I think
nothing.
that's probably how it is worded.
But
I would
It's
guess.
a poster I see every day.
So, well, I mean, you obviously you've run for offices before. You ran at the state level. I remember your run for state rep, and you are associated with, I believe, the Republican Party. And I don't want to get into that per se with regard to the local race because it has no bearing, as you know.
Not supposed to.
It shouldn't, okay? It may in some people's mind. And the only reason I bring it up is because I think you may have somewhat of a reputation in town as being a fiscal conservative.
Without question.
Because of your politics. So that's why I'm asking the questions on the budget side of things. So I'm going to assume that you've looked at the school budget. You're obviously a smart person, and you, I'm sure, understand most of the entries there with regard to the types of programs that are provided, the number of personnel that we have, professional personnel in the school department. So do you think that there are areas within the budget that can be streamlined, improved upon, reduced, made more value? In other words, from a cost standpoint, do you see any areas for improvement there?
That's an excellent question that I'm not really prepared to answer.
Okay.
Simply for my own lack of detail in the knowledge, if I can put it that way. I've looked at a lot of things that seem too expensive, you know. Did we buy too many basketballs last year? I don't know. But I am a fan of the long dollar. That's when I was running my programs for the government. You know, I mean, there are sometimes you look at something, you say, well, you know, let's look at the benefits, cost analysis, cost-benefit analysis, and we also need to consider in anything we do, even if it's, I don't know, tying our shoes, we need to consider the long-term consequences and the unintended consequences. So from what I can tell, from what I can see in the budget, I would say most of it looks pretty well thought out. Now, there's certainly the fine-tooth comb that one always needs. And if elected, I will be using that fine-tooth comb. But it looks like the budget that the superintendent developed and that the school committee recommended and the town approved, it all seems to be very copacetic. So to be honest with you, no clanging bells come to mind in what I've seen.
Well, I guess I would tend to agree with you. I mean, as somebody who's been looking at the town operating budget and the school budgets for probably the last 30 years, I think, you know, as a town, as towns go, I think Chelmsford has always been focused on delivering value for dollar.
That's what I look for.
Right,
and
exactly.
I think we've done a pretty good job of that.
Well, that's good. I'm glad to hear that, but that's not to say that you won't be looking at the budget.
No, and it doesn't mean I'm going to capriciously cut something.
Right.
Well, you know, this teacher's getting paid too much. Well, it's a union issue anyway. But no, you know, you have too many basketballs on the field, on the court. No, I'm not going to. That's, you know, that's nitpicking. That's
Well, now that okay, and I'm glad you said that because that's a lead into another question that is very concerning to me and others as well. Sometimes you get elected boards in a town, and the people on the boards have the feeling that they should be directly involved in the day-to-day operations management. So, as you know, our charter, as far as the town side goes, the select board, for example, does not run the town. The town manager does, and he reports to the board.
Correct.
On the school side, that's more codified in state law, but it's the same kind of relationship.
Yes, it is.
So how do you feel about that? Do you feel that the current school board or recent past school boards are observing that appropriately? Have you seen any what you might consider to be overreach? Or it can also go the other way. I mean, they do have an oversight role. Do you think that perhaps there isn't enough oversight of the current operation? So I'll let you grapple with that.
Well, I'm not going to grapple with it at all. I'll just say that hey, I wish I could be a little more controversial for you to make the voters have a difference. But to be honest with you, I think the school board has been very responsive to the town. I'd like more response, frankly.
Okay, more outreach maybe?
More outreach to the town. Let them know. I mean, I wouldn't mind having a booth at the next 4th of July parade. You know, come talk to me, see what we can do. But but that's off point to your question as well. You know,
Well, it does relate to it in some fashion, but go ahead.
well, this also gets back to the idea where I'm saying that this is effectively a full-time job for me, or, you know, at least 3/4. Let's put it that way. But no, the school committees that we've had, I have very little quarrel with. There's the occasional point of view of a member here or there about a thing I might disagree with, but nothing on an overall, should I say, systemic basis. I think the school committee's doing a pretty good job. I actually think Dr. Lang's doing a pretty good job. I want to keep it going in that direction. And I'd like to possibly introduce some new ideas or attitudes that may come into play from time to time. And let's face it, as a freshman member of the school committee, there's a lot to learn still. I mean, there's a required course,
Right.
State required course that we all have to take when we get elected. So I'm going to be learning a lot about how the school committee works on the inside, and I'll pay attention. I'm also plan on at least the first several meetings to be as quiet as I can be. That becomes difficult to me from time to time, I'll admit that. But I need to get to know my fellow committee members. I need to get to know the minutia of the details and the relationship we have with the administration and the teachers union, and then I'll start speaking up. That's why I'm glad it's a 3-year commitment, minimum 3-year commitment.
Oh, yes, and I think,
So
yeah.
gives you time to ramp up, get into it, and because like with any elected position, like you were select board, I believe.
Yes, I was.
A long time ago. You didn't come in banging the gavel on the first day.
No, but some people do that.
Well, that's not my
And,
style.
and to their peril, I would, no, you're right. And actually, I was probably just, I don't really want to talk about myself, but by way of example, I was fairly well prepared because I had been 7 years on the Finance Committee, and I had attended, I was the liaison to the board, and I had attended almost every meeting. So from a non-board member, I was probably pretty prepared, but I will tell you, when I got on that board, it was a shock. I mean, I there was so much I didn't know.
Yeah, that's what I'm planning on.
Right.
I mean, I didn't tell this as part of my introduction, but I lived in Maynard for just under 15 years. Before
Very familiar with Maynard because I grew up in Concord.
Oh, excellent. I love Maynard. I really do. But when Elaine and I got married, we preferred Chelmsford. So we blended our families here. When I was in Maynard, I was very involved with almost all of what was going on in town. I ran for the select board there. That was the year the Natick Ordnance Lab turned over all that land.
Oh, yes,
So
yes.
I'm glad I did. That's one thing I'm glad I didn't win. I was on the Zoning Board of Appeals there. We had an ad hoc zoning board.
Now, was that an appointed or an elected board in Maynard?
The ad hoc zoning board was elected,
Okay.
but it was not sanctioned by the state. That's why we have to call it ad hoc.
Oh, okay.
The Zoning Board of Appeals, like here, is appointed. And then outside of the town stuff that I was doing, I was also the president of the Boy Scout Council. I led work trips through my church to South Carolina and to Maine every year. So I was thoroughly involved. And then things shifted for me when I moved to Chelmsford. My wife and I found a real calling with the foster kids. We were thoroughly involved with DCF, the foster programs. We adopted 2 girls. And that took all my time. So when the time came 4 years ago to get back involved, I euphemistically can say I jumped in with both feet. So here I am.
So, how long have you been in town?
Just under 30 years.
Well, that's a long time.
30 years in March.
Okay.
Many people still call me a fly-in.
Well, you are. I mean, I came in '79, and that's 45 years. I'm a blow-in. So
Well-
if you weren't born here, you're a blow-in.
I moved to Massachusetts in '79,
Well, there you go.
but here in '94.
Yeah. So, well, and you know, having been here for 30 years, you're well invested in the town, I would say.
I moved here because I liked the town, and I also liked the school system. My stepchildren were getting a tremendous education here when Elaine and I married, and I wanted to continue that going. I guess I misspoke earlier. My oldest boy did not go to any of the Chelmsford schools, but my two younger boys did.
Okay.
And of course, my daughter, who is now 15,
Is she in the high school?
Well, she's the one that's going to New Hampshire.
Oh, that's right. You
But
did say that. I'm sorry.
The Chelmsford school system maintains that.
Okay, right,
posting for her.
right, exactly.
The town is just unable to take good care of it. I spoke with a potential constituent by phone a few days ago, and it turns out his son has almost the same issues that my daughter has, and he's running ragged, trying to get not just the school people, but doctors and everybody to listen to him. It's a kind of an oddball special needs problem that we have, which I don't want to get too detailed in a public setting.
Well, I mean, one of the things I wanted to ask you, and we've already talked about it, but just to follow up a little on it, and I ask this of any candidate that's running for office, taking a look at the current board composition, is there any particular way, or is there any particular path that you would like to chart that can maybe take the board in a little bit of a different direction, specific focus, or specific issue that you think really needs to be addressed and maybe hasn't been addressed as thoroughly as you would like to have seen it addressed? Is there anything in that area that you would like to?
Well, we've got various organizations, some private, some town or state, that address the special ed needs. And I would like to see more outreach, more liaison positions for those organizations. And again, this kind of follows what I initially said. The special needs issue is paramount for me. But I think I'd like to, I don't know, overall, it's hard to say whether the board has any control, because according to the charter, the school committee sets policy using the budget. Is the way the charter is actually written. So you look at a policy you like, or you look at a program, you say, well, we're not going to fund that, and that's how you change the emphasis on that particular program. Or you negotiate with the superintendent. You say, we'll fund that if, that kind of thing.
How much? Well, that's a good point.
So that really doesn't, I don't know if that covers your point or not.
Well, it does a little. I'll follow up a little bit on that, because you just said something that intrigues me, and again, gets into this whole area of potential tension between a policy-making board and board members and the operational manager, in this case, the school superintendent. So personally, I feel, well, I understand what the relationship is supposed to be. The board members are not supposed to get into the day-to-day nitty-gritty, okay, how many rolls of toilet paper do we have, that kind of thing.
Right.
But by the same token, and I've seen this in the past, I don't think some school committees spend enough time in their oversight role, because ultimately you are evaluating the school superintendent's performance.
Well, yeah,
and in
you
order
set
to
his
do that,
expectations.
right, you have to understand what he's doing and evaluate what the results are. So you have to be involved, at least to some degree, in the operations there. It's a very fine line, and I think our current school committee for the last several terms has done a very good job in maintaining those distinctions and handling it the way the state and the local charter anticipate that it should be handled. So I think that's good. So what is your take on that? Do you think it's too much, too little? Would you do anything different in terms of oversight responsibilities on the committee?
That's a good one, and I don't think I've thoroughly considered that. So this is going to be kind of off the cuff.
That's all right.
I can tell you, without getting into personalities or names, there are two members of the school committee that I know.
Okay.
And I admire both. The others I've met in passing, except through the TV or attending the meetings. The strongest, I think the most important part of the school committee, other than superintendent oversight, are the liaison positions. And,
Okay, good, because I was going to bring that up, so go ahead with that.
I think the liaison position should be a little bit, now I know we're limited by charter, as to what a liaison, obviously there are non-voting people that sit on the board, but I think I've seen too many people that go to a liaison meeting. So let's say I'm assigned to the building committee or select board. That's
Yes.
obvious. It seems to me from what I've seen, the liaison member of the board basically shows up and sits there. They're not supposed to speak unless asked a particular question, and sometimes they answer for themselves, sometimes they answer for the committee. Depends on whether the committee allowed them to answer a certain thing. But those are official liaison positions. The main reason I'm running for the school board is to be a voice for the parents of the students in the school system. And I want to make sure that every parent, and my wife's going to hate me for saying this, every parent will have my phone number and my email address. And if they need anything, have a question.
Did you get that, Elaine?
But the point is, and I trust people not to abuse it.
And they won't. Trust me.
I've already had people call me just because I'm running.
Oh, well, yes.
And that's common.
But that's campaign stuff.
That
Okay,
is.
right.
That is. But, I want to bring parental concerns to the committee. What shocks me when I watch a school committee meeting is how little input there is during the public discussion session.
From the public.
From
in
the
general.
public. I'd like to see more people show up, more people get involved. And, come in and say, hey, there isn't enough paint in the school, on the crosswalks.
They generally have their public input right at the start of the meeting.
All the boards do. All the boards and committees do.
Well, Finance Committee, no. FinCom does it at the end. So probably that's the aberration, right?
Well, I don't care about the finance
Yeah.
committee.
Well, you shouldn't.
No, I just don't have a lot of dealings with that. But no, the school committee is right at the beginning. So I have a zoning board meeting tomorrow night, Board of Appeals meeting. The first few minutes will be public
input, right.
And I will bet you dinner that nobody will show up to say anything.
Very, very rarely they do. I'm glad you brought this up because actually the same question came up during the select board interviews that I
wish
had.
more people get involved to begin with.
Yeah, the board running its own meeting obviously is in control of that situation. And what I would like to see, following on what you said, I would like to see the board really take a more active role in acknowledging the liaison who is present. And if issues come up during a normal board discussion, perhaps call upon the liaison. I mean, 15 or 20 years ago, that's the way it used to be.
I think that's the way it should
with
be
the
again.
school, with the select board liaison to the school board, and with the school board liaison to the selectmen. They attended just about every meeting, and they were active participants. Again, they had to wait to be called upon, as you said, but that interplay, I think, served both boards well. And it served the town well.
Well, it's not a one-way communication.
Exactly.
It's an intercourse.
Exactly.
And the select board, just using them as an example, they could very easily go to the liaison, assigned liaison, and say, "Would you take this concern back to the committee?"
And that
now
is
you take it.
Yeah, and that is supposed to be part, or historically was always part of the liaison's responsibility. So I'm intrigued by that because I actually agree with you that situation should be strengthened. So
That's what I hope to do.
yeah, well, that's good. So that's one direction that you would like to take the committee if you're elected.
I will any liaison position I'm assigned, and I have a freshman member has no say in that. I might, would you like to do blanky blank, and you say yes or no. But I will pursue it, and I'll use
Good.
it. I'll do it.
Good.
You can hold me to that.
I will. Oh, I will. You know.
When you interview me in 3 years,
I will absolutely hold you to it. So, Rodney, we've got 30 seconds left, and what I want you to do at this point is look into that camera, and in your best manner that you can, ask for the vote.
Rod Cleaves. I'd appreciate your vote for school committee when the elections come up on the 2nd. And I also want to thank Diana for running as well. We're both getting involved in this thing, and
it's a
help
good
more people get involved.
and it's a good thing for the town.
I think it is.
Very good. Well, we're out of time. Thank you very much.